Good afternoon again on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, where I'm going to make some comments for you on Chapter 13 concerning narrative research. Narrative research is pretty cool because it allows you to study through the person's own lenses their lives. And it has some basic types, which I'll cover in just a second. But the definition and purpose of narrative research, my friends, is basically just to tell how different human beings interact with the world, experience the world around them. When you're engaging in narrative research, which again includes lots of notes, field notes, lots of observations, lots of examining artifacts in order to come to the various conclusions that you'll be asked to come to. Okay, when you're engaging in this type of research, it can take a very long time. It's not something where you interview a person once, say, send them a questionnaire, and then you write up all the information in the questionnaire. That is not how it works at all. We're dealing with people's lives here. And so part of the process of a narrative researcher is to get into the full scope of the person's life, to try to become friendly with them, always watching ethical boundaries. You can become friendly, but you're not really supposed to be their friends, if you know what I mean, because you want to maintain as much objectivity and do away with bias that you can. Narrative research is done all the time now in most of the social sciences. It's done in nursing. It's done in the medical profession to deal the experiences of nursing students and medical students in their educational process, and also the experience of patients, telling the story, or you're looking at the lives of various cancer patients undergoing some certain form of treatment. The book gives you lots of examples of narrative research. Do not think just by writing an autobiography that you're doing a narrative research project. Do not think that just because you're examining a person's diary that you're doing a narrative research project, because you are not. Narrative research has lots of different characteristics that you need to cover. The book mentions two basic accounts. First is the narrative analysis, which is really the focus of this chapter. And I'll read from the PowerPoint slide here, so please bear with me. In this, researcher collects descriptions of events through interviews and observations and synthesizes them into narratives or stories. The story is the outcome of the research. The other kind, which I've actually done and I find to be a lot more useful for people doing research, is the analysis of narrative. This is where you would include more than one participant. You would look at the experiences. Say you're doing a study on first-year experiences of principals in low SES school districts. And you choose a group, again, through purposeful sampling, you choose a group of probably 5 to 10 principals. Then you would do their analysis in the hope of coming up with themes and different codes to try to get their experiences across the board rather than just focusing on one particular person. I'm very familiar with this type of research, and I know many colleagues have done this type of research and who have worked with me and for me here when I was the dean at ETBU. The process is very personal, and you're not asked, you don't undertake this particular process very easily. What are some of the characteristics? Experience of people and how they experience the world, and getting information out to folks that describe that experience as accurately as possible. Remember, again, in qualitative research, you're not trying to generalize to other situations. You leave it up to the reader to take the information you have provided and make their own generalizations. For example, if you're doing a narrative study on, say, your students with learning disabilities in a classroom that has a new reading curriculum, you might want to focus on 4 or 5 of these students and do try to capture their experiences as they go through an adjustment to the new reading curriculum. And then using different types of data, for example, the observations you make, the interviews with the students themselves, the work that they're being produced in class, both on standardized or formal exams and also on your anecdotal observations, interviews with their parents, and so on. You can easily come up with at least 3 data sources from which you could look at to develop codes, and work them into patterns with the ultimate goal of establishing themes. That's the type of narrative research that I like. I can't overemphasize the idea of triangulation and having multiple data sources enough, because this is not simply going out and observing and writing what you observe. You have to look at how all at least 3 data sources point to whatever it is that you're trying to say. And if you don't reach there, then you probably don't have a valid narrative research project. Remember the idea of trustworthiness, as we talked about in the last video. You take those steps to ensure, and they're listed in the textbook. We don't have enough time for me to go into an exact description of each one, but they're made plain and simple in the textbook, and you can easily read from that and get some ideas of how you would encourage and make sure your study has trustworthiness, so that a person who reads from it could also generalize their own thing. There's lots of steps. It's not simply going and interviewing someone. First, you have to have a purpose for why you're doing the narrative research at all. And then, right alongside the purpose, there has to be a phenomenon that you're trying to explore. For example, in the reading curriculum idea that I just talked to you, the phenomenon would be the students with learning disabilities experience as they are asked to undergo one more new curriculum to see if they can be helped in their reading skills. Anybody who's been in education a while, which includes me, almost 30 years, you know that about every 2 or 3 years there's a new curriculum that comes down the pike. Okay, for years we were focused on whole language in the classroom. And the 5 pillars of reading became introduced around the turn of the century with George Bush. And the 5 pillars of reading, and which is emphasized now in classroom, is phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And even as secondary teachers, you have to know how to integrate them into the classroom. Not so much phonological awareness, but certainly all of the other 4. Your role is basically to be a participant observer, watching your ethical boundaries, all in all, and all this stuff. When you do your mini research project, I want you to take the steps listed on that paper and look at them. Don't just put 1-sentence answers to those things. I want you to be specific and purposeful in what you write down. What is the problem? What are some possible research questions? What are some review articles? You don't have to do a review on them, but what I want you to go out and use the databases that are available to you, Academic Search Complete, ERIC, and some of the other ones that talks about in the book, and try to come up with 5 research articles that may be related to your particular area of interest, and then list them in an APA citation, making sure that you want to list them in APA 7th edition style. I didn't take any off for the last list of references you had to do, but suffice it to say there are many that were wrong in that instance. I don't mean to be the APA king, but you're in graduate school. You need to do those things correctly. And there's lots of information that I put up on the modules of the course, particularly one slideshow that you should look through if you have any questions on how to do APA correctly. All right? Narrative research, fun. It's not easy, but it's good to do when you're trying to capture the experiences of other folks, which is essentially the many different types of qualitative research that you can do. I encourage you, if you ever go on further in research, to consider narrative qualitative research, because you'll get some good information if you do it correctly, and you'll provide information to others so they may be able to form their own opinions based on what you wrote. God bless. I will talk to you next week. Have a great day.